I would like to firstly address the whole new normal, as they call it, and how it has certainly affected all our lives in different ways. Now, however, at Sleep Expo Middle East, we believe that no matter what challenges may arise, the methods of raising awareness, spreading knowledge among people should not stop. And we would want these series to be a platform for global readers from across the sectors to come share your knowledge, discuss developments, innovations. Now, the pandemic has certainly left a huge impact, and the sleep industry is no different. Now, when the news first broke out, I remember the second edition of Sleep Expo was taking place in Dubai, but none of us really knew how serious this disease really was back then. Now, today we've heard of so many stories from factories being temporarily closed down, retail stores not being able to function anymore, businesses coming to a standstill. Now, we hope that we know that every person has their own way of dealing with challenges, but we hope in today's session we can learn not only to accept what these challenges are, but also to gain certain insight on how one can cope and deal with them. Now, let's all remember that we are in this together and we should all love to hear from all of you as well. And not to take too much of your time, I would like to introduce to you today's speaker, Mr. Jerry Cheshire, the director of Surrey Beds and the author of Sleeping Blissfully: How to Make the Most of a Third of Your Life. Now, Jerry will be speaking to us about the impact that COVID-19 has had and how the bed manufacturers and retailers can combat this pandemic. Welcome, Jerry.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Mega. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you so much for coming here. Now, before we get into the first question, I would like to inform all of our audience here today to feel free to post in your questions during our conversation. We would like to keep this session as engaging as possible, and I shall address it to our speaker. Do remember, we are here for 1 hour, so do make the most of the time and ensure you get in as many questions as you can. And also, if you have any doubts about want to know more about the show, how to participate, do get in touch with us. We'll be leaving the links for you in the chat box. So shall we begin, Jerry?
Yeah, please do. Let's get on with it.
Yeah. So I guess it's time to address that elephant in the room. So let's start off with the COVID-19, the impact that it has had on the global sleep industry and the bedding industry.
Yeah, I mean, we're not alone in the bedding industry that our manufacturing has had to close. Our retailers have had to close. My shops are closed. I've furloughed my staff. We are in a position now where we have zero income, and we have to sort of prioritize what we do next. Firstly, to ensure that everybody stays healthy. That's the key here. We don't want to suggest we do anything if it puts anyone's health or well-being in danger. The second thing that we should consider whilst we talk over the next hour is that we want our businesses to survive in this recession that's about to hit, probably the biggest recession that our generation has ever known. Certainly, I can't remember anything like it. And we don't really know how big a recession it's going to be yet, but it's going to be bigger than we've ever known. So we want our businesses to survive so that we can secure our employees' jobs. We all want to continue to work so that the economy can thrive. Then, of course, we want to be ready for action when it's all over. And if we can, in the meantime, do a little bit of pro bono work for the NHS or the community or whatever we can. So this gives us an opportunity to take an inward look at what our businesses are doing, how we currently operate and how we can prepare ourselves for the future. Now, obviously, we can look at historic data from previous recessions, and we can learn from that. So what we'll see here is an initial impact. So where we are now, which is the closure, and then we'll probably see another spike of recession as things start to roll. So historically, we've seen that we don't come straight out of a recession. We start to come out, and then things go bad again, and that will probably happen in this case around December or the turn of the year. So just be prepared here to be in this for the long haul. And this isn't something that when the government say we're going to lift the lockdown in three weeks or 3 months time, or whenever it's going to be, because nobody knows, that everything's going to be back to normal again, because it just isn't. And we need to be prepared. We need to be prepared for that. And this means all of the people who run businesses, this means all of the employees of those businesses, and the customers of the businesses, everybody involved in the sleep industry right now has an opportunity to come out of this crisis much better, much fitter, in much better position to do business, and use the opportunity of the crisis to come out and be prepared for some quite exciting things to happen in business.
True. What also moving on to the next question, what are the kind of best practices, like international best practices, that are being used while manufacturing at this moment?
Right. Well, during any recession, there are two sort of phases that happen, and again, history tells us this. We have a reassess phase, or a phase of reflection, where we take a really close look at what our business does, where our business sits in the world, if you like, and what assets we have. So it's almost going sort of back to basics. So when I talk about that, the things that I mean are things like the company's core values, the vision that the company has and has always had, and why the company exists in the first place. So core values and core visions, and do those values and visions still apply right now? And this is a great time to say to yourself, well, look, we know we're good at what we do, and we've got to this point in our business by following certain processes. Are our processes still applicable to the new market? How can we, if they need changing, how can we change them? And just take a closer look at where we are. Then you go on to the sort of relaunch of your business, if you like, assess what opportunities there are for the future, and just be totally ready to grasp those when they present themselves. And there's no time for this. You'll know when it's right, because companies of different sizes react to a recession in different ways. And the larger the company, the longer it takes usually, because what will happen is that, say, a FTSE 500 company, for example, would probably look to go back to core business, use the opportunity to shed some staff, the less productive side of the business, and look at their cost base to just sort of say, well, look, we should be doing this on a regular basis anyway, but now is a time where we can just focus on what do we really need. So scaling down in terms of the team size, probably, making sure that you've got the right people to move forward, and that the people that aren't quite so valuable to the business, maybe we can discard those. And then it takes time for the results of that action to show itself, and then they're in a position to rehire again, and even bring back people that they let go because they weren't the most productive for that stage of the business. And that, with a FTSE 500 company, can take 18 months to 2 years. But for a smaller business, which is much more nimble and flexible, with a smaller team, that doesn't take very long at all. And resetting or reevaluating the business, and then being prepared to take on new opportunities can be that much quicker if your business is lean and hungry, with the right team in place and with the right assets. So manufacturers, the best practices for manufacturing here are to go back to basics, look at your assets, make sure that your assets are lean and ready to act when the opportunity feels right.
True. I think one of the key words over here is going back to the basics itself. So I think that's quite rightly put. But do you feel at this time, do manufacturers need to target new markets? Do they need to source locally rather than overseas? Or do they need to sell directly? What would you suggest?
Well, the answer is it may be right to target new markets. But firstly, of course, you have to assess the markets that you've already got, and are you drawing the best business, not necessarily the most profitable business, but the best business from the markets that you've already got. So take a look at what you have in your current armory and say to yourself, look, we've got assets like a factory. We've got products which sell very well. We've got a database. We've got a brand that we already have. We have our business culture, and we have systems in place to make our business function. So are you going to look at new markets with at this point, or are you going to say to yourself, look, our current market needs to be looked at a little bit closer, because whether we like it or not, it's changing. So the market that we remember back in February when we were at your show in Dubai, that doesn't apply anymore. That's never going to be the same again. So we need to be ready for the new market. And then you say to yourself, well, what is the new market? Where do I go to expand my offering? Well, you don't go anywhere if you haven't really got a grasp on what you're currently doing. But you can, depending upon your circumstances, you go one of two ways. You look much closer at your local market. For example, if you are a manufacturer and you're drawing components from overseas, which you now can't source because the ports are locked down, you really then need to look at sourcing your components from somewhere more local. So does that mean then that you enter into a partnership with somebody which changes how your business functions? Or do you say to yourself, well, look, we're going to create products that are more digital, or products that we can send out globally? I mean, look at your situation, for example, Media Fusion, a company based in Dubai, looking to expand globally. You try to draw from a market from overseas. So here we are now with a webinar talking to people from many territories. I'm in the UK, you're in Dubai. What that's doing is that your market can expand. What you're doing is here laying the foundations for a more international attendee to your shows. And if we look at your situation geographically, you're in a perfect position to draw in the international delegate. But if we can't get on an aeroplane and travel to Dubai and attend your functions, then we need to do it online, which is exactly what we're doing. So what you're proving here is that you've got your database. You are using that to get people together to discuss ways forward. And that isn't just happening in Dubai right now. That's happening wherever the people attending here are situated. So it just proves that, new markets are there to be looked at, but you don't necessarily have to take that course. But what you do have to do is make sure your market is, your products and your brand is still relevant to whatever market you're in.
Sure. We've got a couple of questions that our audience has been asking. One is, what could be the expectations from the global mattress industry? And if you could compare the last quarter of 2020 and the same period for 2019. This is from Mr. Ahmed.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. But, I mean, I don't think we can compare first quarter numbers year on year, because 2019 was a period of growth and prosperity, and 2020 is a period of somebody's just closed the door on us all, haven't they? So circumstances have closed the door on us all. So the key here is that firstly, people buy a mattress to solve a problem, right? So firstly, they either need something to sleep on, or they need something to sleep on better. Okay, so to improve their sleep. So a hotel, for example, whether we're in a recession or not, and they're opening and expanding new rooms, we'll need to put a mattress in every room. That market will still exist, but people who, consumers who are buying a one-off, they may say to themselves, well, look, we've had this mattress for years, another few months won't hurt, and defer a purchase. In which case, for that we really have no control apart from trying to win the business that's out there. And we do that with having, great product and great service, and just trying to be as efficient as we possibly can, using the skills that we already have and that we've used to build our businesses already. So the market will change. The market that we are used to is gone. We need to establish quite quickly, or as quick as we possibly can, just what the new market is, and then what will happen is that new players in the market will come to the fore, and old established ones, may fall by the wayside. And if companies are in a weak position already going into this recession, they probably won't come out. There are retailers who in this country who are in terrible financial state. It's been recorded in the news. They're going to use this opportunity to just maybe close completely, or close and restart, come out with Phoenix companies using the brands that are well known. Interesting times ahead, but certainly some great opportunities for people with the right mindset.
Yeah, we got another interesting question from Mr. Steven, who is asking, how do you see innovation being embraced within the industry, given the public's view on hygiene going forward?
Yeah, I mean, there you go. So there's a great opportunity. So we are going to see a change in priorities from the consumer. Okay, so shopping habits are going to change based upon the fact that they've experienced, months of lockdown. Priorities will change, and if people become more conscious of the fact that they need to protect themselves, and again, going back to point number one on this webinar was that we want people to stay healthy. There will be opportunities for products that probably already exist, which haven't come to market because the market didn't need to change to absorb them or to bring them to the party. But now those circumstances have changed. So if, for example, you're sitting on a fabric which is self-cleaning, for example, or which is more hygienic, and there's a cost to introduce that to the current market. That cost might now be more palatable from the manufacturer. So they may say to themselves, well, actually, this is a priority of ours now, is to produce product that creates a more hygienic environment. Whereas before, they always had it in their armory, but maybe didn't bring it quite to the fore because they didn't think the market would be large enough to sustain it. This is stuff that we need to reassess.
Sure. There's also another interesting question from Kiran, who said, what should be the communication strategy from the health and hygiene point of view when, all are selling on antimicrobial USP?
Right. Okay. So, again, going back to the very first thing, people's health and safety is absolutely paramount. Now, if you're running a factory and it's crowded with people, because the danger of COVID-19 is not going to go away the day you reopen your factory. You need to change the way your processes and systems work for the safety of your staff. The other thing is, of course, that are your staff going to be able to attend work as often as you hope they will? If the schools are closed, that gives a childcare that has a childcare issue. So does that mean that you're going to have to change the way your shift patterns work to accommodate your workforce? Now, we got to remember, of course, that no business can, no factory can survive without people in it. So bringing best practices for health and safety into the factory, which the priorities for health and safety now have suddenly changed. Where it was before protecting you against, personal injury and people knowing how to operate machinery properly. That is still as important, but of course, social distancing within the factory now becomes a necessity until we've got certainty that COVID-19 can be treated, which will probably 2021 if the truth be known. So then, of course, you've got, once the goods come out of the factory, if you might be using, some factories might be using different types of packaging now, which might be considered cleaner. Protective equipment for the delivery staff, a different way of receiving the goods into the warehouse so that there's less social contact. These type of systems must be considered. And people are sitting at home now wondering what to do with their time. Let's get thinking about this type of stuff. And you never know, you may get new service companies which appear out of nowhere just to deal with this type of thing. Companies that don't exist right now or didn't exist a month ago, which will, give entrepreneurs an opportunity to launch businesses and provide a service which overcomes a problem, which solves somebody's problem.
Sure. Going back to our agenda, we've spoken about the kind of impact, COVID-19 has had on the global sleep and bedding industry. We've spoken about a bit of best practices that one can use while manufacturing, targeting new markets. Now, I want to get into the supplier's point of view. Should one look out for new or alternative materials? What do you suggest?
Well, you may be forced to, Mega, because of your accessibility to raw materials and components. Again, we've got to be looking to maybe support the local businesses so that there is less of a logistics issue. So where we just ship in a product from overseas, that's not quite so easy anymore. That in itself will have an impact on the way the ports operate and how import documentation is required. So yeah, using components that come in that you can source locally, or if you can't source the components that you require locally, then you do have to look for an alternative. Now, we know that necessity is the mother of all invention. Okay, so you'll probably find that new products are developed to overcome this shortage, and products that we haven't seen in the market so far start to become introduced, or maybe we go back to different manufacturing processes that we've used in the past, which we've now considered to be uneconomical. So suddenly it may be worth reassessing those to see if they are economic now, particularly as shipping is going to be much more expensive, I would imagine, because of the scarcity of capacity. So yeah, it might be, and this is the whole reset thing. Let's look at what we do and make sure that when we are in a position to come out of the recession, that we're ready for it, and more ready than our competitors.
True. I mean, of course, a lot of them are asking about the retail aspect as well. I was just coming to that. The first natural thought for all of us would be, when we see something like this happening, is to sell online. So do you feel there's going to be a sudden surge in e-commerce, and how beneficial would that be?
Yeah, e-commerce is a mega industry on its own. Okay, it already exists, and there are some major players who have been established for decades. All right, e-commerce isn't an immediate answer for everybody, because it takes years to establish yourself as an e-commerce player. But we can't deny that there are certain products that will sell, that the consumers will buy online. However, what historic data tells us is that a consumer of a mattress will, if they want a high quality product, handmade or hand finished product, handmade product, they won't necessarily buy it without trying it. Okay, and this is why bed stores will always survive in one guise or another, one capacity or another, because there is always the buyer of the best, and the good retailers will identify that and maybe say to themselves, well, look, e-commerce is taking up a section of the market, which is at the moment, let's just take the example of the mattress in a box type product, which sort of has a ceiling on price. So if somebody wants to buy something better than that, then they will make the effort and go out and buy something in the store. We also know that the market is changing, in that the millennials are now starting to become the people with the money in their pocket. And they are the people that embrace technology. Okay, so the start of the digital revolution 20 years ago, people who are now just graduating university are the beneficiaries of that. They are the most adept at using the technology. They're the most creative. They know how to build it. They know how to operate it. They know how to use it to their own personal advantage. So there are opportunities for people to maybe change the way people buy online. But what we're finding is that people use the internet for information. And some will buy based upon that information, but most will just use the internet for a touch point before they go shopping. So from the bed and mattress point of view, then I would say that the current trend of mattress in a box type product, which is already sold online, that market itself will probably see a contraction of the number of companies making the offering. So the strong will survive and the weak will fall by the wayside. This isn't a business that's about the product. This is a business about how the product's marketed.
True.
So that will always be there, whether we like it or not. And some of us who've been in the industry for a long time don't like it because we feel like it prevents people from it contracts the market in terms of its its price point, not its high price point, but its price point. And we think that the people that come into the store buy a better product and spend more money, which is just better for the industry in general. So e-commerce of sleep products, though, other than mattresses, things that, technology that comes in a box, things that people, gadgets, if you like, or, bed clothes, bed linens, this type of thing that can be easily shipped, logistically, stick it in an envelope, get DHL to come and take it away, deliver it to the customer for you. That type of product will see a surge in e-commerce. But what I would say to a lot of companies is that if you're not involved in e-commerce now, it's going to be very, very difficult to catch up. So e-commerce platforms like eBay and Amazon, for example, dominate. So think about, if you're going into e-commerce, that's the type of people that you're competing with, who've got 20 years of data. They create platforms that they test and retest. They're absolutely, really efficient and great at what they do. So it may be better to partner with that type of platform rather than try and compete against it. The thing about e-commerce, of course, though, is that geographic boundaries can come down. So if you want to expand your market from just the Dubai metropolitan area to the whole of the Gulf states, then e-commerce probably allowing you to do that.
Great. Mr. Michael, I hope that answers your question. We also have quite an interesting question from Mr. Manoj, who's asking, do we anticipate customers would prefer economical products or upgrade towards hygienic luxury products?
Okay, yeah. Now, there are a couple of categories that we should focus on here in terms of consumer behavior. One is the people that buy on price tag, and one is the type of people that buy on quality. Okay. Now, if you are a young family with a very, very stretched budget, you're not going to buy premium product. Whether us as manufacturers and retailers like it, that type of buyer doesn't have the financial wherewithal to buy a product any better than the cheapest they can afford. Okay. Now, there is always a market for that. And the biggest bed retailer in the UK is a catalogue shop, where they sell in £99 mattresses. It's there and it's here to stay. That market matures, though, and they then go through a stage where they have had all they can afford, and now they want something a little bit better. So it becomes more of an aspirational purchase, if you like. And that's when people with a little bit more disposable income will go to the shops and spend a little bit more money. So as a manufacturer, you need to position yourself to say, well, I am going to provide for the low-income families, the people that, very high volume, very low margin, that type of market, or I'm going to say, I'll leave that to somebody else, which is exactly what I do with my business. I leave all of that low-end stuff to other people, and I concentrate my effort at the top end, where people are spending thousands of pounds rather than tens of pounds. Okay, and what I did back in 2014, we were seeing we were seeing the impact of e-commerce on our retail business, and we had to decide what part of the market that we really needed to attract into our store to help our business grow and make our resources much more efficient. Okay, so every advertising pound that we spend now is designed to encourage somebody to walk in our store and spend 4 figures rather than 3. Okay. Now, what that did for our business was, firstly, it made us more efficient in that we were doing less sales, but we were taking more money. Okay, so we were effectively doing less work. Okay, we were selling a much higher quality product, so that our customer service issues went down because we weren't getting issues with the better stuff. And thirdly, we were getting some really good referrals because the people that were buying from us were recommending their friends to come in. So it was a win-win-win for us. Okay, and I just said to myself, look, you know, these mattresses at hundreds of pounds rather than thousands of pounds are being sold very well and efficiently by people online who know the e-commerce market much better than I'll ever know it. So I'll leave that to them, and I'll concentrate my effort on the nicer, high quality products. And for me, you know, it worked. I saw a surge in business. I was starting to get customers that I like more. Does that make sense? So doing business was much more enjoyable. And I'm now talking to people that get it, you know. And that's why I wrote the book, because I found myself trying to attract a particular customer that was asking me the same questions all the time. So I said to myself, what I'll do, I'll just write it all down. And then even people that don't walk into my shop can benefit from the knowledge that I give out to people every day. And you know, when I wrote the book, it was written in such a way that any bed retailer could offer it to their customers without compromising their own relationship with their client. Okay, so it doesn't promote my company, you know, per se. It just promotes good practice when people want to come and buy a product. So to answer the question, decide where you want to position yourself as a company, and then just focus all of your effort on winning business in that market.
Sure. I hope, Ms. Catherine, that answers your question as well. Jerry, coming to my next question, you know, it's interesting that you spoke about how the customer behavior is such a key in this situation. Now, when we talk about, if I may say, the post-COVID era that we are in, how do you feel that the consumer shopping habits would change now, and how do you think that retailers should now respond?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a pretty tough question to ask. But let's just look at what's happening. Okay, so we've got the consumer holed up in their home. They are in a position now where they are reassessing what they need and what they want. So needs and wants. You know, it's the whole haves, needs, wants. What do I have? What do I need? What do I want? And their thought process about how they spend their money is now going to change. Okay, so we need to be ready to respond to the new data that comes out. At the moment, we don't know what the new market's going to be like, but we need to be adaptable and nimble enough to say to ourselves, well, look, you know, when this happens, we're going to do this and have a plan. My personal view is that people will probably not be so focused on designer goods necessarily. They are now used to not going out, so buying stuff that impresses their friends, you know, is not necessarily so important because they're not seeing them. Okay, so you don't know if I'm sitting in an Armani suit, you know, or a outfit that I bought from the local market. You don't know. It doesn't make any difference. So spending is slightly different as far as the consumer is concerned. The other thing is that in the UK we have a furlough scheme where the employees are being paid 80% of their salary into their bank account from the government. Okay. Now, what this means is that there are people who are receiving the top top amount of money that you can receive is £2,500. So if you're in lockdown for 3 months, you got coming in £7,500. Now, what are you spending it on? You're only really spending it upon your absolute necessities, which is your medication and your food. Then you've got, luxuries like subscriptions that you buy to things like Netflix and, satellite television and the cable television. Satellite, show me age. And then, of course, you've got the rest is disposable income, which you can't physically spend. You can't go out there and buy anything with it. So people are now going to, some people, there's going to be a sector of the market who now are used to having a little bit of money in their pocket. And usually when people are used to living from one paycheck to another, they have aspirations to buy different products that people that have excess money want to buy. So that mindset will change. It's just consumer behaviour, which we need to keep a very close eye on. And when people are holed up in their home, what they look at is what's good and bad about where they are. So this might mean there's a surge in home improvements, or so your local DIY store, would be a great place to see the start of retail trends, and that means in turn that they might want to upgrade their furniture. And the other thing, of course, is that the relevant to this conversation is that people will spend more time asleep or more time in their bed because we're not waking up to an alarm call to get on our local commute. So we're going to look at the furniture and the products and the things in our home and say to ourselves, well, that needs upgrading, and that that needs upgrading, and maybe they become the priority purchases when things start to get back to normal. So there might be some opportunity there for mattress retailers. The other thing is what we don't know, Mega, is how pricing is going to change. So because the factories are now going to have to reassess their costs, it means that the product that's produced at the end of their process is going to probably have a different price tag on it. And what we don't want to do is, the temptation in when the market goes quiet is to reduce prices. Well, that's the last thing we want to do, really. What we really want to do is add value to what we're already doing and encourage people to spend a little bit more, because the more the consumer spends, the quicker the economy gets back on its feet. So, no, it's interesting times ahead. There's some great opportunities for the right people here with the right mindset. Yeah, definitely.
Sure. We have a lot of people from India as well who have a lot of questions regarding, what would be the potential for a country like India, in terms of growth in the mattress industry, and do you think that they would be able to gain market share from China after the outbreak?
I definitely do. The only thing is, though, that China's going to be the first country to come out of it, I think. So they're going to be that much ahead of us. Now, I was thinking about your, the geography of where you are and why your exhibition is globally quite advantageous for you, is because you're very close to India. It's easy to get to you from Europe. So when business grows in the Arab states, the India and Pakistan maybe are the countries that benefit first. Does that make sense? Because it's there's already a natural connection with the population, and it's not too far to ship stuff. India as an economy is one of the more progressive, if you like, fast growing, with a lot of resources that are valuable to the world, right? So the other great advantage that India has over China is that people in India tend to speak English, right? So that does, as English being the global language, it makes it much easier to communicate. With my experience with having product manufactured in China is that the communication is a problem. As much as you like it not to be, it is. And if you're sending product spec to a factory in China, my own experience with a product that I had made out there is that I went to and fro with them with my spec 5 or 6 times, and I thought, I'm just not going to get this exactly as I want it. So I got on an aeroplane, I flew out there, and I went to the factory, and I've sorted everything out in a day. That I don't think I'd have that same issue if I was dealing with somebody in India, because we would be able to use technology much more efficiently, then of course the shipping from India is not it's not as long as it is from China, so you've got that a little bit quicker around in products. So in fact, for one of the projects that I'm working on at the minute, I'm looking at manufacturing in India, and it does seem to be a much. India is a market that's making itself available, if you like, to importers. The other thing is that if your market is the US, the relationship between the US and India is maybe not. The US and China is not quite as buoyant and friendly, if you like, as it once was. So if the US start to introduce tariffs on Chinese product, India is the country that is in prime position to act, to take up, to benefit from that, because it's unlikely that
I think another popular question that a lot of them are asking is, it's a very basic one, and will people really want to buy a mattress once we are out of the pandemic?
Yeah.
Especially in terms of the cleanliness and hygiene aspect when you're looking at
absolutely, possibly more so. So here's the thing about the mattress purchases. A mattress isn't an aspiration purchase. It's what they call a distress purchase. Okay, people buy a mattress when they need one. They don't necessarily buy a mattress to. It's not buying a new car that sits on the drive outside the house and impresses the neighbours. This is something that goes in the bedroom and gets covered with bed linens, and no one ever sees it, not even yourself, right? So with distress purchases, distress purchases will always be made. People will make that purchase when they need to. And in terms of health and hygiene, you think about how unhygienic an old mattress is. If people want to freshen up their homes, looking at a 10-year-old mattress is probably a good place to start.
Sure. Mr. Sasidhar and Mr. Karthik, I hope that answers your question. Of course, moving on with our agenda, Jerry, let's touch upon the kind of alternate revenue options that manufacturers and retailers can look during this time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really tough one, because there is no quick answer, okay? So if you are able to teach people things, okay, then you could possibly organise some sort of online education service. But in our industry, that's pretty unlikely. But what I would say to you is create assets that ultimately in the future would generate you an income. So not a quick fix, if you like, but position yourselves or your company to benefit from what happens in the future. Now, take your example again, Mega, where your general revenue is generated from exhibitions. Now, you are creating an opportunity for the industry to network with each other. Now, whilst I realise that there's no cost to that for the participants, that what you're doing is creating assets, a digital asset. For example, this video will be available for everyone to view online forever. Okay, so that in turn will lead to future revenue. Okay, so the more assets you can create, the more opportunities you'll have of creating revenue in the future.
Sure. We have got some very interesting questions that are coming up. One of them is being from Mr. Gluia. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it right or wrong. Well, they say that we're observing that a large number of mattress manufacturers are entering the hospital markets. Now, do you think that this trend will continue, and will it reshape the part of production?
Not really. The hospitals will always need products. In the UK, a product that's created for a hospital is completely different to a product that's created for a domestic home. So what you must consider here is that, firstly, all of the hospitals will have beds. They will buy mattresses. That's something that happens. Now, there's already a very well-established market here, which is completely different to the domestic market, or even the hospitality market. It's just a different market, and if you're not in it now, it's very, very difficult to get into. However, it doesn't mean you can't, but it could take an awful lot of resources to get into it. So what I would say in the short term is that if you can do a little bit of pro bono work, if you like, if you can support your local hospital by providing product, whether that be mattresses or pillows or any sort of pressure relieving product, maybe for seats for wheelchairs or whatever that might be, if you can do that, it's great PR, okay, for your business. I mean, there are people who are taking advantage of the tiniest favor to create PR, and it's see-through. It doesn't actually do them any favors, really. But there are opportunities to work with the hospitals where you can do some great stuff. I mean, I did just recently the local council. I have a relationship with them where I provide mattresses to shelters for women who are victims of domestic abuse, and what they find right now is that their demands on their services are increasing. Okay, so they had to open a new facility really quickly, and of course they come to me and they say, we need eight mattresses tomorrow because we've got these people coming in. Now I just sent down 8 mattresses. It's done. You asked me to do it, it's done. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's just me putting my little bit of help into society. That's all it is. I don't want anything for it, but it's done now. If I get asked again for the same thing or for a similar thing, I'll react in a similar way. But I don't see that type of market being my future. I don't see that in future that these people are going to ask me for mattresses and I shall charge them for it. I mean, I will go back to the original terms of business that I have with them once this is all over, but it's not the market that I target.
There's also another interesting question from Mr. Anthony, who says that currently there are about 220,000 mattresses that go to landfill every day in the UK alone. Now, do you think that COVID-19 crisis will increase or decrease the already, severe environmental impact of the mattress industry?
Yeah, look, disposal of mattresses is an issue. It's an issue that already exists. Whether that'll change because of COVID-19, time will tell. That remains to be seen. But any product that goes to landfill is a bad product, right? So, but the market can't change overnight. We can't just have 100% recyclable mattresses tomorrow. That's not reality. And what the industry in the UK is doing is looking much closer at what happens to a mattress after its useful life. And they are now introducing products which either are 100% recyclable or biodegradable, so they can go to landfill and biodegrade properly. Now, we discussed this in great length actually at your show, didn't we, Meg? Yeah. Where some people are taking foam mattresses. A lot of the foam isn't biodegradable, but it is recyclable. And I was talking to a chap from India who was telling me that it's you can recycle it and recycle it again. And we talked about this thing he referred to as circularity. So it always has a useful life rather than having to dispose of it. So there are mechanisms in place to reduce landfill. We just haven't got to an acceptable level of what that is at the moment. But people are working on that, and it is people are much more conscious of global goals and trying to get. There's one company in the UK who entered a product at the last NBF Awards, which is it's 100% accountable. So it's made with natural product. It's fully recyclable and biodegradable after its useful life. 100% of it can be either recycled or reused. Every component for it is they could tell you which farm the wool came from, or where the cotton plantation is, and 100% accountable. Now that has an attached cost, which of course can't necessarily be passed on to the consumer. And when this factory produces a fabulous product, I've got to tell you, which has a very high price tag, firstly, it's not necessarily commercial, but what it means is that the factory are working on development of product, which has this recycling subject in it from its conception. Sort of a bit like Tesla making electric cars. The first ones were phenomenally expensive, and but as manufacturing quantities increase, so it becomes more acceptable to the market and embraced by the market. So that's happening. That's happening. That's a good thing. There's some great companies that do it. The other thing I want to just mention about this company, and they'll know who they are, but I'm not sure they want me to identify them in that way. That they identified that a few years ago. They identified that one of the problems with e-commerce was that with selling mattresses on e-commerce was the delivery. Okay, what they couldn't find was a very good quality logistics company that could fulfill their orders for them. Okay, so they created one. Okay, so that they actually now have one of the best two-man white glove delivery services in the whole of the UK. Now, when we talk about reset or reevaluate or go back to basics, what they're a great example of saying, we are a bed manufacturer. But one of our companies is a delivery company. So when they're reassessing what they do, the first thing they'll say to themselves is, look, we don't want to destroy our core business, but it may be beneficial to scale down the delivery company. And then reassess it when the market's back to normal. And that's just an example of how to, look at what you already have, try and get some I'm not going to suggest that they're going to close the delivery company at all. I'm just showing how you get, if the bed factory is the truck, the delivery company is the trailer, and they've got to keep the truck running because the trailer doesn't pull itself, right? So when we're talking about going back to basics and reevaluating what we've got, it might be wise to just look at those sort of peripheral businesses and say, our efforts, if we're going to downsize our team, our efforts really need to focus on our core business.
A lot of questions also have been coming in terms of the delivery part of it, especially during the COVID period, where, what is the kind of the practical solution that one can use in order to deliver mattresses to residences or to, hospitals?
Yeah, the thing is, with a mattress in a box, you can just deliver it to the doorstep. That's not a problem. But what we're finding is that we sell the higher quality products. Now we got to a point where the government told us to close, we still had outstanding orders, and we'd had the goods in, and then of course we wanted to deliver them. What that meant was that firstly that we fulfilled the order and we can file it and it's done, and secondly it means that we get the balance of the account, so the customer pays the balance for their goods, and that gives us cash flow. So it was quite important for us to get these deliveries out. Well, of course, some of the public don't want it. They don't want anyone near them, right? So that's fine. We've got to respect that, and we've got to say to look, well, your goods are with us. We're in a position to fulfill the order. As soon as you feel comfortable with having, two strange men in your home to fulfill the delivery, and there are others who say to us, look, you can deliver the product to the front door. You leave it outside. I've got two 20-something sons who live here, and they're quite happy to lift the stuff up the stairs and set it up, and we've done that. But we're in a position tomorrow where we're delivering two very high value heavy products. One is going into a brand new build, so we are the first people going in there, so that's fine. So there's nothing in the room. The carpets are down, but there's no furniture in there. We're going in, and we'll be the only people there. So we'll go in, we'll set it up, we'll do it. The second one is where the customer's having their bed delivered into an existing bedroom, and what we've done is we've got them to clear the bedroom first. So we're going to adhere to social distancing, and we're going to be able to go straight into the bedroom, set the bed up, and go. And the only two people that are going to be there are my delivery crew, who are a father and son team. They live together. We're fulfilling social distancing requirements. So there are issues with delivering product into people's homes. Now, what we've tried to do is add value. So what we do is we do this delivery service as part of our service. This is the Surrey bed service. When you buy a product from us, we do everything. So we come into your home, we take the old bed down, we bring the new one in, and set it all up for you. And all you have to do when we leave is put the sheets on and get in. Sure. So we can't offer that service right now because firstly we can't take an old mattress away, and if we took it away we've got nowhere to take it because the recycling centres are all closed. Sure. So we can't take a mattress away from anybody. What this in turn does is puts pressure on the local authority to come and take the nasty stuff away, so that's their issue. But again, going back to what we said at the top of the show was that people's health and hygiene is absolutely paramount, and there's no point in us trying to do anything for our business if it's going to put anybody in danger. There's just no point.
True. Of course, we're almost running out of time, but we've got a lot of interesting questions. I'll just take a couple of them before we end the session. This is almost like a two-part question. One is, of course, I would like to know, how do you feel now post-pandemic the industry will approach their business, and especially when most of the manufacturers they're targeting is the hospitality industry? And so that's the second part. How do you feel the hospitality industry would react to, probably the entire market.
Right. Okay. There are two points to answer this. Firstly, is what's the demand from the hospitality industry going to be? Okay, because there's no flights coming in, which means that hotels aren't necessarily selling rooms, so their product that they already have is not wearing out, so they're not going to necessarily need to replace it quite as quickly as you think they will. But what we do know is that every hotel room has a bed in it, at least one. Okay, so when the time is right for the hotels and the hospitality industry to change their mattresses, then it will happen. Okay. Now, one thing I learned when I was at your show is that in Saudi Arabia, that the authorities for all of the pilgrims to Mecca and Medina, they insist that the hostelries replace their mattresses every 12 months. Now, I would imagine that still applies. So there is still a demand there for product in certain market sectors. So, just be prepared for that. And look for opportunities. What hasn't stopped in the UK is the construction industry. So, people are still building houses, they're still building hotels. So there might be hotels that are still fitting out, in which case, there's a nice little one to target. But it's a matter of finding those opportunities and just seeing, where new opportunities arise. Yeah. So the hospitality industry is an important part of our market, isn't it? It's a particularly important part in Saudi Arabia for those reasons. But of course, until the travel and tourism market reopens.
Yeah, of course, Jerry, just to add to that, in Dubai, the Expo 2020 has been shifted to 2021. So definitely, we will see a surge in, people coming in to the country, and there will be a demand in the hospitality sector. So I hope that also kind of, gives a sort of a hope for manufacturers that the demand is going to see, an uprise.
Yeah. So the key really is make our, hope we're in a position that our businesses survive, so that we are in positions to take advantage of these opportunities when they arrive.
Yeah, of course, we've tried to answer, pick out all the questions, and I'm really glad that the industry has started talking about the issue that we're facing, the challenges that we're facing. I think addressing these challenges itself kind of gives you a kind of a solace and kind of a solution. So thank you so much, Jerry, for taking your time out, to give us this kind of information and insight into the industry. And it certainly gives us a kind of a silver lining, and we hope that we all come out of this in a much stronger way. And I think the key over here is to believe that, to stay positive, to use this time to think beyond the four walls that we're confined in right now. And you never know. I mean, by the time we host the next Sleep Expo Middle East in March in 2021 in Dubai, we may see some very unique innovations as well in this platform. So, we would really love to hear from all of you. If you have any good innovations, do get in touch with us. We have a really good platform here to showcase these innovations and reach out to the right target market. But Jerry, again, thank you so much, for your expertise, for your time. And we certainly hope that, this will give us that kind of a path towards, discussing more such things into the bedding industry.
Yeah, sure. It's important that we all talk to each other and help each other. And, this is a time for partnerships and collaborations and not a time for, posturing and trying. It's about trying to work together, not against each other. And maybe we can use this time to just sort of reassess where we are, who we want to do business with, and just how we maximize the opportunities when we come back out.
True. Thank you again so much, everyone. So until next time, do stay safe and stay at home. Thank you.